and I worked with a number of vocal coaches here in Hollywood to learn how to speak like that. And one of these old guys, he just reached over and in a grandfatherly way patted me on the knee and he said, "We're real proud of you. Local girl like you in a big Hollywood movie." And I just said, "Why, thank you. Thank you."
There's got to be something you can do. A month ago, he was a healthy, perfectly all right, happy kid.
Ronny Cox he was just lovely to work with. I was basically an amateur at the time, and so he was very nurturing and very kind, and kind of helped me find my way a little bit. A fun guy.
He was this obsessive runner, and every morning, and you know how early you have to get up when you're filming, and he'd be up a couple hours earlier than we were, out running, and he would run his number of miles or whatever. Very disciplined runner. Of course, marvelous actor. I'd loved him since Deliverance and a lot of other things, and it was really good working with him. A good, talented musician. He did a couple songs, one of which you can still hear in the movie, a thing called Old Devil Whiskey, and he did another song called The Beast Within, which didn't actually wind up in the movie.
I did get to spend a couple of evenings with him, listening to him tell stories. He's such a great rock on tour storyteller.
And Bibi Besh, we became friends and got together a number of times, quite apart from the film, and would have lunch together and so on. And it was so sad to me when she passed away. She died of cancer, and that was a shock. She was so young, and had a thriving career. She had just done a little while before that Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and so forth, and just a wonderful lady, terrific actress, and I miss her.
Bibi Besh, rest her soul, was another magic person, and I really had an affection for Bibi.
Casting has to work in two ways. It has to work in that you have people that are appropriate to play those characters and to tell the story in the best possible way. But you also have to get people that are going to work together, because you become kind of comrades in arms in creating this story. And Bibi and Ronny and me and Paul, and we just got along like a house on fire.
You're beautiful. Don't you know that?
Kitty Ruth Moffett was wonderful to work with. Sweet, smart, I remember that her husband was with her, and which was particularly strange in the swamp love scene, the one that is rudely interrupted by the doggy with the severed hand in its mouth, which has to be one of the more unusual endings to a love scene in cinema history. But doing that, where we're kissing and getting into that, there he is off to the side. I felt a little odd, a little uncomfortable about that. He was fine. It wasn't an issue. We're actors. But, it was a little strange.
I'd forgotten all about that scene. We're laying there in the leaves and rolling around in the leaves, and Paul and I are having our little thing, and then there comes the dog. Plop comes this severed hand. Oh my gosh. One of the things I was worried about was, can I scream? I don't know. I don't scream. Apparently I can. Within this cast, we were full of jewels. These, Ron Sobel and John Dennis and so many that you've seen them a million times, but never get an opportunity to see them really stretch their legs and get into it. And this film was really a good thing for that.
Damn you, boy. You stay away from my baby. You stay away from my little girl.
Some wonderful actors like Logan Ramsey, who did some of the most hilarious improvisations I could imagine. He would take what was in essence there in the script, but he would spin off of that a little bit. And the scene where he's making the hamburger and I come and I deliver the groceries and so forth and end up, dining on his neck. Logan was so funny during that scene, some of these lines, and that Philippe was behind the camera jamming a handkerchief into his mouth with tears in his eyes of laughter, trying not to spoil the take. And here I am having to be very intense and, very famished and, you know, focusing on him with this great, you know, growing hunger. And but inside, I'm also like struggling not to lose control, you know, not to laugh, which is something the British theater refers to as corpsing. Appropriately enough for that context. But I didn't actually, I'm proud to say I didn't actually ruin any takes. I came close. I was feeling that kind of laughter starting to, you know, but I kept control. Not easy. RG was very memorable because here's this guy who's one of the toughest guys in films, and if you've seen Stay Hungry, oh my God, his fight scene with Jeff Bridges, he's terrifying. And he was this, like, he couldn't find a sweeter guy. His hobby, believe it or not, was crocheting. He would crochet, and he had like a spice garden at home, and he would talk. I mean, it's like, only a guy like that, I guess, could get away with crocheting and not have anyone tease him about it. So he was great. Everybody was. It was Meshach Taylor. Everybody I can think of was just a pleasure and a joy to work with. All the actors. Don Gordon, fantastic. L.Q. Jones, great. Hilarious stories he had to tell about working with Sam Peckinpah. Oh my God, amazing stories. That's a whole thing in itself.
What Harvey Bernhard did, and Logan Ramsey, the casting director, was also an actor. They cast a terrific group of actors. You know, I mean, it was like, in some ways, it was like looking at a Sam Peckinpah stock company. So they were put into a Southern Gothic horror film.
Well, you gonna ask us in?
I wasn't able to discuss the script as fully as I might have with Philippe to have helped him follow the logic and what was going on. If you read my original script, it makes a great deal of sense and it's crystal clear what's going on. And you look at the film and the dialogue's still there and all of that, but scenes are collapsed and exposition scenes are taken out. But what happened was they blended things together to make it easier to shoot because their budget was so limited. They lost the logic of it. And not only did they lose the logic of it, they lost a lot of the narrative drive because it was set up as so much of what I do was set up as a thriller, and thrillers intercut, and they lost a lot of the intercutting. When I look at it, what I see is a film that makes a lot of sense for the first half, and then it devolves into incoherence, and a lot of that is because they lost the scene that carried the exposition, which was Michael with Tom Laws, which happens in the alley, and Tom Laws explains about the song of the cicada and how you can curse your progeny, you know, with the beast within, like the cicada, and that Billy Connors will live again through his son to come out to emerge to kill his son literally, and to emerge and to take revenge on the Kerwin family that turned him into a monster and that killed the woman that he loved. Of course, that's ridiculous, but it's the same kind of logic that I used in Child's Play, where there I use voodoo. And if you're into the situation enough and you're involved enough with the people, and I think you are with Michael in the script and his parents, that you know you'll use any halfway reasonable sounding justification, you know, for a creature being born inside of you. It was a hell of a script, and I think that when they did the blending, I think that Philippe, whom I just think is a terrific guy and director, I think he did a terrific job with what he had to work with. I look at it now and I think that all the acting scenes are terrific, but I think that the balloon-headed boy, which is to say Michael McCleary, you know, it's just the effects were so rudimentary at the time that they could not get my vision on film. You know, it just wasn't technically possible. You can't. And the incoherence of the script, and the logic that they lost in the script was because of a hack job that Harvey did trying to make it cheaper to produce. You know, so, you know, but that's making film in Hollywood. And I'm sure the same thing is going on right now. But they got enough of it enough of the script there that the scenes and the motivations and the themes still come through. And so what happened was, what was a film that was not a success when it initially came out has gathered more and more of an audience. And the other thing that happened was because it went on cable. And became this, because this is just at the dawn of cable now. So it played on cable in the 80s. So if you were a young boy or girl, but especially a young boy because it's about a young boy, and you were watching it at home, it was the scariest movie you've ever seen. So I mean, I don't know how many people I've had come up to me and say, you know, that was the most terrifying film I ever saw when I was 9 years old. But it's the rites of passage, or it echoes teenage puberty. That's one of it. That's one of the reasons that it has its appeal. I think that Paul Clemens did just a wonderful job. And Paul Clemens is a very, very talented actor. So you had these wonderful performances.
I don't know whether I ever saw it on the big screen. I think maybe I only saw it on VHS on my probably my 20-inch screen back in those days, because I wasn't a big TV watcher either. So no, I'm excited that it's going to have a new life, and maybe I'll get to see it. I wonder if I'll recognize myself. I don't feel like I was probably the same guy.
I'm sorry, baby.
It's exciting. It's like this thing that you've spent a chunk of your life making, that you've committed a part of your spirit to. Suddenly you're going to put it out for the world to see. Will they love it? Will they hate it? Will they nurture it? Will they kill it? It's anxiety levels around the opening of a film are huge. And you don't know what's going to happen. And for me, since it was one of my first experiences with a film coming out, it was it's exciting. It's really exciting. And then we all got to see this thing that we had worked so hard on, and it's very satisfying.
It was my first really big feature assignment, and lo and behold, it got made. And I thank Harvey Bernhard for that, and Philippe Moore and everything else. However, at the time, it was not a success. And I couldn't get a job for a year after. And of course, I'd spent, I don't know, 6 or 7 years getting to that point. And it was absolutely crushing. And I thought the movie was quite good, and I especially thought the first half was quite good. And then, of course, the next opportunity I got was a little film called Psycho 2, and that changed my life.
You know, it didn't do all that well in the theaters during its initial release, but boy, did it ever do well on home video. Suddenly, it became a big seller there, and over the years, slowly, what I thought was going to wind up being a forgotten movie has turned out to be anything but that. It has a very loyal, devoted cult following, which I'm delighted by, and, you know, because I'm proud of the movie. I think it holds up. I think it's one of the last examples of a kind of a raw, gritty kind of approach to horror, where it's all real, no CGI. What you see was what you get, was really there. And it has a nice, wonderful vein of dark humor that runs throughout it, and yet it's not too jokey. It's not constantly winking at the audience, as a lot of later horror films did. It took itself just seriously enough. It was filled with all these wonderful H.P. Lovecraft references, kind of in jokes, and so forth. But it had a genuinely effective atmosphere. It was, bloody when it needed to be. We didn't pull any punches. In fact, some stuff had to be cut. It was too extreme, even for then. And the fact that it was not just a slasher thing. It was something, a new approach to an old trope, the werewolf genre. I mean, there are certain similarities to Curse of the Werewolf, for example. Yeah, there are certain parallels there. It's a kind of a sort of a stepchild in a way of that, I suppose, an offshoot of Curse of the Werewolf. But hey, very different. I mean, Where's Cicada? It's the only Where's Cicada movie that I'm aware of.
People like a good story. And we were quirky enough and outrageous enough and real enough that it worked.
It shed its skin like a cicada.
I'm looking at my storyboard from 1981 on The Beast Within, and it brings back a lot of memories. I remember drawing the 2:3:5 Panavision ratio squares, 4 squares per page. The first thing's kind of interesting. It's what I called a camera map, not a shot, and it was a way of showing the crew really easily exactly what I wanted to do. This was my first studio picture, so I had this storyboard as a backup. I don't normally use storyboards, but it's good to have if you want to show the crew immediately what you want. Now I'm looking at the close-ups here. First close-up of Caroline, another 2 miles, and then they have an accident, and well, if you've seen the film, you'll know what happens. He has to leave her. Of course he has to leave her. It's a horror movie, and he doesn't know that she's going to be raped. There's some details on the hubcap. The hubcap pops here. I remember my DP telling me we're going to shoot that in reverse, so that I don't know. He had some complicated thing with a mirror. Oh, I know what it was. The car crashed into a mirror, which meant that they had to drive on the other side of the road so that it would look as if it was on the right side of the road for you, dear viewers. So now we're getting really into a bit of detail here. I had to show the studio how I was going to do that first rape. That's why this is pretty detailed, with Caroline, played by Bibi Besh, and the dog, and the storyboards of I'm looking at the storyboards of the forest here, and the dog jumps out as she, down the bottom of the storyboard, close-up of her saying Thor. There's another camera map down on the bottom left-hand corner, scene 9, page 5. Then I did a, I loved comics, by the way, so I really enjoyed doing the storyboard. So Caroline's POV, you see the beast silhouette rears up in frame, sniffs. My theory with the beast was not to show too much, or, less is more, actually, at the beginning of the film. And there was this theme of the cicadas. There's the implication that the beast is a man cicada, or a were-cicada, as amusingly people described it. This was the first were-cicada movie. But one regret I have is I didn't get close-ups of bugs on the tree, which I drew here. I think National Geographic kind of a bug shot would have been great. Anyway, Caroline sees Thor on page 7, and Thor is dead, and Caroline screams. That was a big close-up of her screaming. Again, the film kind of followed this to a point, but it's not exactly what happened in the film, and this storyboard was really done to show the studio and the producer that I knew where I was going. Now, particularly the rape scene was sensitive. How are you going to do the rape scene? So it starts, scene 12. You see the hand of my drawings. They're kind of cool. I like these. And the beast is big silhouette. He looks like the abominable snowman there. There's a little map there on the left, on the final frame on that page. Then how are we going to do this rape scene? So, she bangs her head, she falls down, and there's that gigantic beast. I mean, the beast is bigger. I'm looking at scene 12, day 2, and there's a huge beast there again. I mean, he wasn't quite as big as that in the movie, but certainly was scary, and he rips off her blouse, which is kind of why a cicada would rip off a woman's blouse, who knows, but that's what we did. And it was pretty explicit, so that you see the breasts there. So the studio approved that we were going to see breasts and a naked woman. And the beast bends down to mount Caroline, according to the storyboard. Once again, the studio approved all this, and I didn't want to get into a situation where they would say, you didn't tell us you were going to do this. Well, so they approved. Then down the bottom of that page, scene 12, there's no page number on the storyboard here, but you see the beast between her legs, and you see the frame underneath. You see the 2 little arrows in alternate directions, which was my I guess, way of saying that the beast is in action on Caroline. And then again, the next page, a big close-up of a bug. And again, I don't know why we didn't have it in. It just, certainly no one stopped me, as far as I recall. But that would have been terrific. But the scene is still very effective, and for a horror movie, which is supposed to freak people out, it freaked people out. So Caroline has been raped, and then we see a truck arriving. There's a little camera map there. And Ronny Cox jumps out. Caroline, he's screaming, Caroline, Caroline. And he finally finds her. There's a camera map there on how we shot that. I like tracking shots in Panavision 235. I always did. It was fantastic shooting in that format, which of course now, goodbye Panavision 35mm, it is now all as you know, folks, digital. So Caroline has blank eyes. I don't know whether even that was in the movie. But this shot was page 8, day 3. The shot of the truck going off. Then we cut to a title, 17 years later. And I've written slow there. I'm not sure what I meant. Page 13 to 14, Caroline says, I was attacked and raped. And Ronny Cox says, but he's my son. And this is pretty straightforward storyboarding here. The doctor's asking whether they had any other kids. The kid is pretty sick, apparently. And again, it seems to be slightly different from the finished film. The doctor tells them that we've done everything we possibly can for Michael. He's obviously a bit sick. And then Michael escapes, as I recall here. And again, there's a simple camera map up the top here, page 23. And it's a bit difficult following the storyboard without the script, actually. But the key thing for this storyboard was, by the way, that rape scene, at least for the beginning. Michael screams, he's having flashbacks to the trapdoor, his prehistory or the spirit in him. He's remembering the trapdoor. Now, this is where it got complicated.